Hello, great people of the internet, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to World Africa channel. So, regarding the Ugandan presidential elections, now, the European Parliament had a very heated plenary session to discuss matters regarding or surrounding the presidential elections in Uganda. So, members actually raised quite a number of issues that were witnessed during and after the elections in Uganda. So they actually talked about alleged human rights violation. They talked about intimidation and so many things that led to the sham election in Uganda. So the European Union has come out gun blazing and has given out one warning to African leaders who really don't want to leave power or who are in the mission to kill democracy. They have put the message very clearly to them that you know what? If you cannot work for democracy, if you cannot work for your people, we are going to stop a lot of privileges that you get from us. They have shown it clearly that they stand for democracy. You see, the members of this house actually were very categorical on the case of Uganda, especially the mistreatment of the opposition. And this is one of the things that the European Union actually is against. They're saying, if you cannot do things the right way, then we will have no business to do with you. And they have threatened that they are going to impose sanctions. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to some of these sentiments from the special session that was conducted at the European Union concerning what is happening in many African countries, especially Uganda. So here is how things went down. So the clip is here.
Next debate on the agenda is post-election situation in Uganda and threats against opposition leader Bobi Wine.
In Uganda, the full subversion of democratic standards, abuse, severe restrictions on civic space, widespread intimidation of opposition figures, fraud, violence, and a nationwide internet blackout. How is it possible that the main opposition candidate, Mr. Bobi Wine, could have been sieged by the military in his house and his family and his wife assaulted by government forces? All of this to guarantee a seventh term in office of Yoweri Museveni. It is just unacceptable, and Europe cannot accept this. I must thank all the political groups that we have convened and made a consensus about this. This is, of course, not just about Uganda. It's about supporting the hundreds of millions of Africans who seek freedom, who seek the right for their voices to be heard, who seek their fight for progress and dignity, but are not allowed to do so through violence and oppression.
People know what democracy is. They believe that leadership is all about serving the people. And if you can't do that, then you have no business to call yourself a leader. And that's why every election in Africa matters to them a lot. Because these European countries, they give a lot of support to African countries. They give a lot of foreign aids that support key sectors like education, healthcare, you see. And they do this because they want to improve the living standards of the ordinary citizens in African countries. So it pains them a lot that the funds, the money they give to African governments are used against the very people they really want their livelihood to be raised. So the message they have is this, that if African countries, or African leaders cannot stop this bad habit of dictatorial or authoritarianism, then they will not be at a position of doing business with them, because they are not happy when they give money to foster democracy. They are supporting African countries in so many aspects, but these monies are used for other things. You see, Africa is actually weak, is bewitched, because the very people or the very leaders who say that we Africans should stand against colonization by these European countries are the same leaders that use their powers to suppress the common citizens. They use their powers to mistreat their subjects. If you dare speak against their ill deeds, they only have one solution, and the solution is to do away with you. They have ensured that democracy is no longer existing in Africa. So there is a problem with African leadership. There is a very huge vacuum in African leadership. And that's why the European Union is trying to push these leaders, telling them that leadership is not all about selfish interest, it's not about an individual interest. It's about the countries, the country as a whole, especially the common citizens. They have talked about corruption in these countries. You see, election reforms, they have always wanted Africa to be at a position where democracy can be seen to be alive. The other time when there was an election in Tanzania, an election that was disputed across the world, European Union was the first to come out and dispute that election. You see, they condemned the manner in which President Suluhu was elected. They termed it a shambolic election. And now, when African Union is quiet, the United Nations is quiet, while all these evil deeds are going on in Africa, European Union is again up in arms, asking African leaders to behave, to serve their people, not to use their powers to suppress innocent citizens. They are saying that they're not going to tolerate this bad behavior among African leaders. You see, so even as Africans, we should not be brainwashed by these African leaders who don't want to leave power. Every time when they want to divert attention, they bring in foreign influence, while they know very well that foreigners are not the problem. The problem is our type of leadership, where somebody comes, promises heavens, you see, and when it comes to election, they're being elected, and once they become, they are sent to those positions, then they now turn against the people who elected them. You see dictators in Africa, Museveni in Uganda, Theodore Obiang. Look at these leaders who have stayed in power for so long. They don't want to leave power. They are grooming their own sons, their family members, to take over leadership from them, because they know they have done weird things during their regime, during their tenure. So they fear accountability. They don't want the public to know what they did or what they are doing in their terms in office. So I ask myself, who really bewitched Africans, where power is something that is used to actually suppress other people? And I will always support anybody who comes out clearly to denounce or condemn any act of authoritarianism, any dictatorial leadership. And we Africans should wake up. We should not be lied to that our problems were caused by colonizers or the colonial powers. You see, our forefathers fought for independence. They wanted Africa to have its self-rule. Many African countries, almost all of them, have got independence. But that independence does not reflect on leadership. Africans have become their own enemies. People who are preaching against the colonial rule are the ones that are using even worse, are using the worst form of, the most brutal ways of dealing with their subject, people who make them who they are. So how I wish that God could actually save Africans from this yoke of bad leadership. And therefore, we should stand by the European Union when it comes to matters that are geared towards improving democracy in Africa, good leadership, good governance. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is my voice for now. Let me see you in the next video.